Hey fellow gliders, welcome back. I'm Robert Petito, and in this video we're going to take a look at how to create custom edit screens, a feature that doesn't yet exist in Glide, so that way you can go from a haphazard screen with an overwhelming amount of editable fields to something that looks a little bit more succinct, beautiful, with targeted specific edit fields like this. And before I reveal the secret as to how to create custom edit screens, it's important to understand all the different types of screens that exist in Glide and how they relate to one another when it comes to building your app. And the three guiding principles we're going to keep coming back to in this video is that 1, every tab you create within your app has to be sourced from one of your tables in your database. 2, every detail screen and every edit screen that you create has to be sourced from a single line or a single record from that table that you're sourcing. And 3, every single detail screen and edit screen have an identical layout for every record of that table. In order to get a better sense as to what I'm speaking of, let's take a look at the sample sales call app. So this app allows me to log sales calls and then view that sales call data. This tab, call log, is sourced from my sales calls. I'm displaying a collection of those sales calls. And this collection is representing all 20 records that I currently have in my database. If I go to my data, sales calls, you see I have 20 rows. And those rows I'm displaying inside of this table collection. If I click on the collection and then click on the Peekaboo data viewer, we can see that this table shows all 20 calls. Now, if I were to click on any of these calls, for example, call 5, we see that my list of 20 calls gets filtered to just that row. So now we see that this screen, this detail screen, which is for one of the records in my table, is filtered to just the row that I clicked on. In this case, call 5, which means any component that I add to this screen will be able to display any of the data that I have on this record. So here you see that the fields component, which is right now currently displaying every call in my table, is displaying all the data for call 5. If I visit call 6, you'll see the same effect. Now, if I back up, we can see that the action for this table, when I go to click on any row, is to show the detail screen for this item. A detail screen in Glide is the default view for the record of that table. And one special feature about detail screens is that they get replicated across every record of that table. So if I visit call 5, we see that I have 4 components: breadcrumbs, title, fields, and notes. And if I visit any other record, for example 15, I get those same 4 components. Now this is a wonderful feature. Can you imagine having to duplicate or replicate the layout for every single record in a 10,000 record table? No, that'd be insane. So the ability to have detail screens that replicate your layout will save you a lot of time. However, what if you wanted to create a specific screen that's different or has a different layout than your detail screen? Glide gives you that feature with a different action called Show New Screen. So again, this default action is a Show Detail Screen. But if I wanted to show a different version of that record for whatever purpose I want, instead of Show Detail Screen, I have the ability to go to Navigation and Show New Screen. For example, let's say in this sales call table, I want to create a new view of just the notes for that sales call. I can create an action. I'll tie it to my collection item action, and I'll call this notes. And instead of showing a detail screen, I'm going to go to Navigation, Show New Screen. And I still want for this item, which means that record of this table, right? It's for this item. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Notes, and you see I get taken to a brand new screen. At first, it looks identical. We have breadcrumbs, title, and fields just like before. However, this is truly a new screen, because if I get rid of the fields component here, navigate back, and then click on this record, we see that my detail screen is still intact. But that show new screen only has the two components that I had defined earlier. So now we can populate this with things related to notes, something like this. Right? And this new screen again gets replicated across every row for that item. Now what's different is that the detail screen for a record will always be the detail screen no matter how I'm approaching it within the app. A show new screen action will only present a layout from that specific component. So just so you see it, this component, this table, has a show new screen action for notes that shows me this notes setup. However, if I were to create a new collection, right? And again, I do actions and do a show new screen. If I click on any one of these, you're going to see it has a brand new layout, right? It doesn't have that notes layout like I did before. So the only way to reuse a show new screen is to name it and then reuse it. Just so you see that in my table, I'm going to go to Actions, and I'm going to change this Show New Screens action to be a custom named action. So I'm going to go to Actions for Sales Calls, Create New Action. I'm going to call this Show Notes Screen. Done. Okay. And now, in this other collection or anywhere else in my app that's tied to the sales call table, I can now reuse that action and thus reuse that screen. So here I can say, instead of saying show new screen, I can now select show notes. And now if I were to click on any of these, I should get that notes view like before. So this is kind of an important concept to understand, is that detail screens will always be the same no matter how you approach it or from where in your app. But a new screen will always be a new layout per component unless you name it and reuse it. So how does this tie into using edit screens? So if I dive into a record here, you see that I have a title component with an edit button action. This button has the action of show edit screen. All right. And like a detail screen, the edit screen will always be the same no matter how you approach it or from where. So you see that this edit screen right now has a list of all of my different components that I can possibly edit for this table, right? And if I go to a different component, but I have it have an action that says show edit screen, right? And I click on edit, I get that exact same layout. And just so you can see that it is truly identical, I'm going to go ahead and add just a random component to the top here, right? And if I were to go to the edit screen via this way, there's that hint. From the detail screen, there's the hint. Or from a completely different component altogether and go to edit, again, there's that hint. So edit screens are just like detail screens, is that the fact that they're replicated no matter how you access them from the app. And here's where we get to the premise of this video. What if I wanted to have a custom edit screen, right? Detail screens have a show new screen counterpart that allows me to have a new layout for the details of that record. But edit screens don't have that feature. Edit screens don't have a show new edit screen counterpart. That would be nice, but because it doesn't yet exist, here's what I do in order to create custom edit screens in your app. The first thing we'll need to do is create a column in your users table that's going to specify what kind of edit screen you want for a particular record. So I'm going to go ahead to my data, go to my users table, and create a new column. We'll call this edit screen type. And the value that we place into this edit screen type column is going to serve two purposes. One it'll end up becoming the title for our edit screen. And 2, it's going to allow us to have visibility conditions to the different columns or different components on the edit screen. So let's go back to our layout. First off, I'm going to go ahead and remove that hint. And 2, you're going to see here that we have 20 different components that are all writing data to our screen. This is very overwhelming visually, and it's not very practical, right? If we want to have users just update a couple of things, you don't want them to have to scroll up and down to try to find the right column. So what we're going to do is categorize the data fields both on the details screen and on the edit screen in order to provide a more straightforward, clutter-free experience for our user. I found the best place to start is on the details screen itself. So I'm going to head back to our details screen. And I'm going to break apart this data a bit. Right now I'm displaying all of the data in the entire table as a fields component, which again is also visually overwhelming. So I want to start chunking this information just a little bit at a time. And I'm just going to start from the top. So we have here some call information, some agent information, customer, some more call. And one of the best ways to visually separate your data is through the use of containers. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new container. And I'm going to put the fields component inside of that container and then duplicate my fields component for later. This container, I'm going to set the background to be card. This will give a separated kind of feel for just that specific set of data. And next, I want to take away any data that doesn't belong. So if I'm focused just on call data, I really only want these first 4 data points. So I'm going to go ahead and remove everything else from my fields component, like so. So already you can see this is a little bit easier on the eyes. And now I'm going to go ahead and provide a title component. And for this title, I'm just going to call this call details. Now the reason why I use a title component is because it has a built-in action. So I'm going to go ahead and add an action to this title component. And you see it starts me off with a show notification. But really what I want it to do is to edit call details. Right? Give a little icon. All right. And the thought is I want to be able to edit just these 4 data points, the call ID, the date, the duration, and the disposition. Now, how can we make that happen? One idea is you could have a show news screen. And on that news screen, I want to open it up in a slide in, let's say. Right? And again, this new screen is a brand new version of the data records here. And I could just put in some edit fields. So I could put in a text entry component. That's just pointing to the call ID, a date picker that points to the call date, and so forth, right? I can do those 4 different components. And this would work, and it would actually update things live. So the moment that I change the call ID, you see that's how it gets updated everywhere, right? Now, does this work? Yes, right? I get a targeted edit screen for just those components. But it's very risky because, as you saw, the data is live. So the moment that I change something on accident, right? And if I close out the screen, there's no way for me to undo that data entry. And if you're allowing your users to edit the data directly from the app, you're going to want to put in some safeguards, some 2-step ways to make sure that they're confirming that they want to change the data. And this does not cut it, right? You see, I just lost all of my records. So I typically stay away from showing new screens that act as an edit screen. It's better to use an edit screen because edit screens, right, have a safeguard put in place. I can change this data all day long, but if I hit cancel, it never changes the data, right? That's why edit screens are so wonderful in Glide. However, as we mentioned previously, the edit screen is a universal screen. It doesn't matter how we approach it, it's always the same screen. So how do we create an edit screen that's unique to just this concept of changing the call details? And the trick is using a value that you're going to use as a visibility condition for the components on that edit screen. So how I approach it is I'm still going to have an action. This action will not be a show new screen, but rather it's going to be a show edit screen. But before I show the edit screen, I want to write a value to my users table that will define the purpose of the edit screen. So more than just showing the edit screen, I'm going to create a named action, and I'm going to call this edit call details, where I'm still going to show an edit screen for this item. But before I do, I'm going to do a set column values where I'm setting not this item, but from my user profile, the edit screen type, which we created earlier, and I'm going to name what I'm trying to do on this edit screen. In this case, it's edit call details. I'm going to go ahead and copy this because I want to use it later and hit done. And now if I hit edit call details, I still get the same edit screen, but what's different is that now in my users table, I have an edit call details value stored underneath my profile row. And I'm going to use this value again for filtering and visibility conditions. Okay, so this edit screen has my call data. And again, I only want the ID, the date, I want the call disposition, and I want the call duration. I'm going to add those to the top, and I'm going to add those 4 components to a container. So I'm going to add a container. I'm going to add those 4 components to the container. I'm going to name my container the edit call details. That way I know exactly what is contained for that purpose. And here's the magic. I'm going to set a visibility condition on this container. So I'm going to click on the container, go to Options, Visibility, and I only want to show this container when the user profile edit screen type is, and then the value that I had set. In this case, it's edit call details. Okay. So right now you see that I have those 4 values. Just so you see it, I'm going to go ahead and remove everything else. And if we want to make sure that these are required, because we're on an edit screen, we can flag these all as being required. And now we see that my edit screen has just these 4 components. Now, one last thing here is that instead of just edit, it would be nice to see what it is that we're actually editing. So if I click on Edit Form in the top right corner, I'm going to change the name or the title of this screen to not just edit, but to the value that I'm actually setting in my user profile table, the edit screen type. And now you see we're seeing I'm edit call details. Okay. All right. I think you can see where we're going with this. All right. So now next on the details screen, let's create a new grouping. All right. I already did call ID, call date, call duration, and call disposition. All right. So now let's look at agent information. Here I have agent name, an agent ID, and agent notes. So let's create a new container. I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate the old one. The title here will be agent details. I'm going to replace the fields here with agent name and agent ID. Get rid of the other 2. Okay. And now for this title, instead of the edit call details, we want edit agent details. Okay. Now we don't want this edit call details action. We want a new edit agent details action. What's great about named action is that you can duplicate them. So I'm going to go to Actions for Sales Calls, hover over Edit Call Details, click on the triple dots, and then choose Duplicate. This will bring me into the action editor. Get rid of the copy of and change call to agent. And I'm still going to have a show edit screen, but now I'm going to set the edit screen type to not edit call details, but edit agent details. All right, hit close. And now if I click on this edit button, you see that this container doesn't show up anymore because of the visibility condition is not edit call, but now it's edit agent. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this container, change it to edit agent details. It'll now display, but it has the wrong fields. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the fields I don't want and replace them with the fields I do want. Agent name and agent ID. Okay. All right, so now we see our title says edit agent details. I can hit cancel. So our call details has our call information, and our agent details is our agent information. It's the same edit screen, but it feels like two different screens because of the visibility condition on these containers. All right, let's do one more just so you see it. So my next bit of information here is we had agent name and agent ID. Now we have customer information, customer name, industry, and location, maybe budget and objections. So I'm going to go up to customer budget and customer objections like this. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this container, duplicate these fields, get rid of anything that's not related to customer like this. Change my title from agent details to customer details. Right? Change my action to be edit customer details. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. We're going to duplicate this action. Change my title. Change my set column. Close. See how fast we can do this with all the duplicating, right? All right, push the button. We get a blank screen because the visibility condition of these two containers are false. Let's change this to edit agent. All right, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this container. We'll change it to edit customer details. This is why that copy paste is so important, because we use it everywhere, right? Options, change the visibility condition to that same thing, edit customer details. It now shows up. And now we're going to add that information, customer name, customer industry. Here, let's do this, text with customer industry. That's better. Do a few more. This will be customer location. And then customer budget. Oh, and one more, right? We had customer objections. Okay, we'll rearrange these so that it makes sense. Like that's fine. Okay, measurements required. And what's cool about doing it this way is that you can make some of these required or some of them not required. Now, what's cool about this setup is that I can mark these 5 fields as required, and these will be the only 5 that are needed in order to submit this form. Even though these other 6 components are also required, because they're not visible on my edit screen, the submit button ignores them. So already our details screen is looking so much better, right? We have our data that's being separated visually. It's easier on the eyes. We have purposeful buttons that show the edit screen, but more so than just showing the edit screen, it's also defining a value as to the purpose of that edit screen that we're using, not only as the title of the edit screen, but also as the title of the container, which is also the visibility condition for the container to hide or show the correct components that we want to edit at that time. So hopefully one day Glide will come out with a show new edit screen type action, which will make this video absolutely pointless. But until that happens, you now have a trick up your sleeve to have this little hack to create your own custom edit screens. If you have any questions at all about how I made this happen, feel free to leave me a comment below. You can also reach out to me at x@rpetito, like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.